Representative Munson, thank you very much for being on the program. I presume we should start with which is going to be the biggest news story of the day. There's a job shortage. You should run out and get one right away. I think I saw that on your Facebook page. Please explain.
Well, yeah, certainly. I've been talking to a lot of bar and restaurant owners. Actually, a lot of employers, retailers, they can't find workers. And you've seen in the media, there's been a lot of places that have posted signs saying, due to the workforce shortage, we're not able to do this or that today. And so I thought I would post on Facebook that since we're talking about, gas shortages and everybody rushing to the pumps, maybe we should say there's a job shortage, and maybe people that are on unemployment collecting more than they would in their normal jobs will run out and get a job.
I find this unbelievable that we didn't see this coming. I want to say it's 20 months ago, something like that, back in the Trump days. We had the lowest unemployment rate of like 50 years or something. Everybody was working. People were going out there. The money they were making was going up. Now, I get COVID hit. Don't get me wrong. But literally two, and I think we have 4 restaurants total in my fine hometown, are closing one day a week, not because people don't want to go, because they can't. They got to give the people that are working for them at least one day off a week. They can't hire enough employees. Where'd everybody go?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly. I mean, I don't fault the people that are making more money on unemployment for being selective and trying to decide if they're going to go back to work. You can't pay people more money than they were making in their job and expect them to go back to work. We just need to work on the economics of this. There are people legitimately that are out of work that cannot find a job. But if a job is offered to them, they should be accepting it or losing their unemployment. And many states have already put that policy in place or are refusing the federal, $300 bonus unemployment checks a week. And I think there's 9 of those states that have said that they're refusing that money. So I think it's a policy that we could adopt in Minnesota as businesses are struggling to find workers.
The president's spokesperson came out and said, though, that had nothing to do with it. The extra $300, that has nothing to do with it. These are folks that are just having a tough time for whatever reason, not wanting to get back in the workforce because COVID's still out there, whatever it is. So I take it you don't believe that. I think if you're making enough, and again, I'm with you. I don't blame anybody. If you're sitting at home and you're making more money not going to work 40 hours a week, I would call you a fool to take it. But we're offering it, and now they're saying, and that goes through September, if I'm not mistaken. Are we looking at these places not being able to be fully open until at least September when people then decide, okay, let's go back to work?
Yeah, and keep in mind, this isn't just full-time workers. If you had a job where you're only working 10 or 15 hours a week and you get unemployment, the state unemployment claim is, half of what you used to make. But then the $300 bonus is indiscriminate. It goes to people that were part-time or full-time, can be way more money than they were making in their part-time job. So we need to address that and to allow employers to find workers.
Is there any chance that that's going to happen in Minnesota? I would presume not. I don't mean Mr. Negatometer, but I had talked to one guy. If you, and old days, back in the 100 years ago days, you were on unemployment, you had to show every week that you applied for jobs, had a list you applied for and that sort of thing. Do they even have that requirement anymore? And if you're offered a job, these guys that want to get, if they offered somebody a job who's unemployed, can they honestly turn it down and still collect unemployment?
Yeah, in Minnesota, they can. Governor Walz has an executive order which says that you don't have to accept the job, especially if you may feel threatened by COVID, that you don't have to return to work. I believe that executive order is still in place. So yeah, definitely people can, and I don't want to promote it, but that's the policy that we have in place.
Let's go down that road though. We're 60 some plus percentage of Minnesotans have gotten the vaccine or halfway through it, but we got 60%. And I've been using this because what I didn't get out of the governor's speech is turning of the dials. I get it. July 1st, good, we'll be back. But what I don't get is if you're at 60% of those that have gotten the shot, what about those that have actually had the disease and got over it? So they'd have immunization as well. They'd be over it. We could well be in the 75, 80 percentile, couldn't we? Because at least 10% of Minnesotans actually got the disease.
Yeah, certainly we should be, approaching, if not already, have herd immunity. But, I mean, if you're obese and you have diabetes or a bunch of underlying conditions, you may be at higher risk if you're working in an environment that has high contact with people. So I don't fault you for not wanting to go back to work if that's your risk. But when we have policies in place like this, there are a lot of other people that take advantage of those policies. And the result is we have hundreds of thousands of jobs that we can't fill because people are at home collecting unemployment.
But just on the COVID thing, are we not at a point where we have more shots waiting around to be put in people's arms and people are standing in line to get them anymore? We're down to 10 or 12-year-olds of 16. And if I'm not mistaken, there hasn't been a death in that category in the entire length of this pandemic. So we're looking, I've actually gotten 2 or 3 commercials sent to me in different forms, one on television, one on the Facebook thing. We're advertising shots. We've got enough money out there. Come on in. And it's like, muscular guy, get your shot, be a man. It's amazing, but we've got ad agencies creating stuff for us to get shots. If you wanted a shot, if you're in one of those categories, you would have it by now, would you not?
Yeah, I think if you want a shot, there really is very little excuse to not have received the shot, except for the millions of Americans who cannot receive the vaccination because they have an allergy or they have, in their family, a history of adverse reactions, permanent injuries, or deaths from vaccines. Those people just can't get a vaccine, even though they may want to, have protection. But for those who can and want it, you should be able to get one.
Well, you should, and you should be able to get one by now. My point is, and they did some study, the folks that haven't gotten it yet haven't been convinced yet that it's a good idea. They've just got other reservations. And it's America, for heaven's sakes. I don't blame anybody for not taking something that the FDA hasn't even approved yet. It's in the, whatever you call it, experimental trials. But if you don't want to put that in your body, I can get it. We can get to herd immunity without you getting your shot. Am I nuts here? Why? I believe we're going to start seeing real pressure on those that haven't got their shot, or get a tattoo saying you got the shot, or have it in your wallet that you got the shot card. I think we're going to start seeing people start forcing others to get these shots with, when I say force, peer pressure.
Yeah, certainly public shaming is out there. My fear is that we're opening this up now to 12-year-olds. This latest vaccine was approved for use on 12-year-olds, and we really don't understand the long-term impacts that they could have. And so I'm a little fearful of, pressuring children to be vaccinated. Those who aren't, don't have significant underlying health conditions. But I hope we can have an honest debate on public policy for kids being vaccinated.
Well, let's do that. Here's a public policy debate I'd like to talk about after the break, if we can. Are you guys going to really legalize marijuana in the state of Minnesota? This is the first time it's gotten this far. Can we discuss after the break?
Absolutely.
Representative Jeremy Munson on Al in the Afternoon. Representative Jeremy Munson, I thank him very much for being a part of the program. I'm a little shocked by this. And then on the other hand, why be shocked anymore? I'm too old to be shocked about some things. The idea of legalizing marijuana in the state of Minnesota has gone as far as it has ever gone. What are the chances this gets passed, Mr. Munson?
Well, I don't think it's going to become law this year, but I think that it's important to have the conversation. I'm a big supporter of medical cannabis, medical marijuana. I believe that it does work. I've talked to hundreds of patients. Saw my father, who passed from cancer, use it, and it helped a lot. I've talked to a lot of veterans who use it for PTSD. But Minnesota is one of 36 states where medical cannabis is legal, but we're the only state in the country that only allows the oil. You can't actually use the plant material, and so that means that it's so expensive and it's so out of reach. It's not covered by insurance. So I believe in expanding the program to use the plant itself, and that is a big portion of this bill. That's why I'm supportive of those provisions. But as far as legalizing personal use, we need to have a lot of discussion. I've got some amendments to the bill tomorrow to protect gun owners, because, as many of you know, it's still illegal federally, and anybody that uses cannabis is prohibited from owning or purchasing guns. And so I have language that I'm working with the Democrats on getting into the bill that would protect gun owners, protect the right to own and carry a firearm, even if you're using medical cannabis, if you're on the registry, or if you're purchasing it for what will maybe eventually personal use.
See, and what I think, Representative Munson, and maybe I'm talking for everybody because I like to pretend I can. I don't think the rest of us have any problem with medical marijuana. A doctor says you need it, is going to help you out. None of my business. I really don't care. Where it gets goofy for me is you got 5 places in the state where a guy can get it, and not a one of them is close to me. So my vet next door, he's got to travel hours to get what he wants. If you're going to do it, why can't it be prescribed at, the pharmacy? Why can't I pick it up at the pharmacy right down the street here? Why would a veteran where I live have to travel an hour one way just to pick up his medical cannabis? I don't have any problem with it for medical purposes. But when you start making it recreational, it changes a whole lot in the state. I don't think Colorado's proved that was a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, well, when I lived in Los Angeles back in the 90s, we voted to legalize it for medical use in California. But the reasons why you could be prescribed medical cannabis were pretty extensive, headaches, PMS. I mean, it really opened it up to pretty much everybody that had a head or, was a female could get it. And the result was a kind of a backdoor of personal use. You really can't determine if someone's has a prescription or not. Now, it's illegal for a doctor to prescribe cannabis. All they do is certify that you have a condition that qualifies you to be on the cannabis registry that's run by the state. And then from there, licensed retailers can then dispense it to people who are on the registry. So that way you're not breaking federal, medical law. That's how the program works. We only have a few dispensaries because the process to make the oil that we currently allow is so expensive and so restrictive. And these companies that make this stuff can't deduct their actual business expenses on their taxes because it's illegal federally. So we need to figure out a way to make it so much easier and less expensive for veterans and for others that can use this. But as a result, it will be out there more. And we want to put in control, different regulations and controls on that and make sure we keep it out of the hands of kids. And so that's why a lot of this legislation is addressing those on preventing companies from advertising it and other things like that. And there's also a tax on it. If it goes to personal use, it's only 10% tax. You can't tax the snot out of this like cigarettes because then the black market for cannabis will accelerate like we've seen in other states.
Oh, interesting can of worms you're all getting in, but this is going nowhere, although you're going to be bringing it up, or you're not. It's coming up tomorrow, and you have some amendments to it, but you honestly believe this is going nowhere? Is that because of the Republicans on the Senate side?
Yeah, it's not going to become law this year. It's probably going to be a bigger conversation. But as you know, South Dakota legalized, recreational use or personal use of cannabis. So we have states around us that are passing this, and many states in the country have passed it for recreational or personal use. It's something that we need to have conversations around employment law, public safety, and addressing everything so that as things progress in the country, or it could be legal federally, that we have things in place to regulate it. And this bill actually also has stuff where you can grow your own for personal use, so that it would remove government from that, for people that want to use it themselves.
All right. Well, we'll get into that. We'll watch and see what happens. Can we talk more about what's going on we're 5 days away, I think, 5 days from this session being over. Can we talk about that when we come back?
Absolutely.
All right. We've got him as Representative Jeremy Munson on Al in the Afternoon. I know Representative Jeremy Munson, 23 Bs from Lake Crystal, and I thank him for coming on and doing this legislative update for us. Let me do this, though, Representative Munson. Maybe we can get people to hang through the break to talk about what you're going to actually vote on. What I would like to talk to you is we only have about 3 minutes here. Let me ask you this. You had posted something about hydrogen-powered cars, which I find is fascinating. Pour some water in there and let your car run. We find out that works. We're going to all be hurting ourselves with this, problem with gas. But here is my thought to you. Did I not read somewhere that the Supreme Court, some judge ruled that Governor Walz can implement this California rule standards without it going through you guys?
Yeah, the executive orders are subject to judicial review, but not power of the legislature. So, I guess the judge ruled that he can impose these mandates on dealers and consumers without input for the legislature, and that's unfortunate. But that's the ruling of the judge.
Okay, so he can do that, and he has. He put the edict out there. Okay, we're going to do this California mandate, which basically says whatever California decides to do, we got to kind of follow along, right? I mean, basically, it's giving them the option to figure out how we're going to run our cars.
I don't think it's tying what we're doing to what they choose to in the future, but he's implementing the mandates that they already have implemented, restrictions on car dealers, mandates that we have to, sell the same kind of assortment of vehicles, electric vehicles and such, even though the most popular car in California is the Honda Civic. The most popular one here is the Ford F-150. So we drive different vehicles here for different, for obvious reasons, but he's implementing those mandates in Minnesota.
Okay, so he implements those because he's got executive powers to do it. He puts them out there. When he gets rid of the executive powers, then does that go away? And my point being is, if he waits until after Monday next week, you guys aren't in session, so it would be an entire year before you guys get back before he can do anything about it.
No, these are different executive powers. So it's actually interpretation of the legislation, and I quite honestly blame Republicans for this one, because during the Pawlenty administration, Republicans put in place some clean cars and Minnesota pollution control legislation that gives the authority to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to regulate certain things, and they have taken that legislation and interpreted it to be they can control, stuff for carbon emissions, and that's where they get the power. That has nothing to do with the executive powers that Walz has given himself. That is part of the executive's job, is setting rules, agency rulemaking, and that's what this is.
But I would presume, and maybe that's wrong, I do that, but I would presume most of the car lots, the dealers that own those car lots, have been pressing against this. Why did the House or the Senate not take it up to get rid of that portion? Because I know a couple of car dealers in town. They sell a ton of trucks. They don't sell anything else. No one wants anything else. So how are you going to force them to do that? How did that not get taken care of during this session?
Well, the Senate passed legislation stripping the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency from having this authority, but the House, being under Democrat control, did not. So it stands.
Interesting. All right. I find that interesting. And this hydrogen powered car thing, is that going to catch on? Is that really a thing? I was trying to read if you were making that up.
No, I mean, it is a thing, and it has, I think it's the future of power for vehicles, especially commercial vehicles. Except the problem is when there's another solution out there, which is battery powered electric vehicles, and that is the one that the government has chosen to subsidize and prop up. It effectively boxes out competition for new ideas. It's like when ethanol was, coming about and such a hot thing, and switchgrass was another idea that got boxed out by the ethanol subsidies. I think we need to allow more free markets to determine the best electric powered cars, because as you know, battery powered ones use slave labor and all this terrible mining methods around the world to produce these batteries.
Well, and again, you went electric. If Minnesotans were willing to open up the mines again, it might be a fantastic thing, quote unquote, for Minnesota. But we don't want to do that. So now you're getting this stuff from China and other places. Representative Munson, when we come back after the break, let's discuss what is going to get done in the legislature in the next 5 days. It all comes down to this. We're down to the nip and tuck. Fair enough?
Yep, very good.
Representative Jeremy Munson, 23B, Lake Crystal area, comes on once a week, tells us what's going on. And I can't thank him enough for taking the time to do it. I'm Al Travis, 3 to 6, Monday through Friday. Thank you for playing along. You got a question for the representative, send it to me at al@ktoe.com. We've got Representative Jeremy Munson on the line with us, and I can't thank him enough for doing this bit with us. But before we get to the legislative stuff, I got to be honest, Representative Munson, you scared me. I came in from mowing the lawn this afternoon, had time to get her done. I had hurt myself earlier, didn't get done over the weekend. I run out, then I come back and I read, Minnesota DNR wants no mow May. I'm in trouble. I mowed my lawn. What? The guy next door, I'll tell you what, he'll love this because he won't mow in May, June. He's dandelion raiser over there. I battle it. What's this no mow May thing? What am I missing?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. In the agriculture committee, when I served there, we talked more about bees and butterflies, and we talked about ag policy. There's a big push to preserve pollinators in Minnesota, and obviously bees being a big part of our community for pollinating plants. There's a big push to allow people to have longer grass in their yards, keep their wildflowers there so that bees can pollinate. And the DNR put out a big thing saying don't mow for the month of May in order to help the bees, but they don't realize that 90% of Minnesotans live in cities where you get fined, or they come and mow your lawn and put it on your taxes if you don't mow your lawn.
Well, what I don't get is and again, I mowed the lawn today, so I'm up on this. I know this for a fact. I didn't see one bee. I didn't hit a bee. I didn't kill a bee. And unless the bees are going after the dandelions, I get that. That would help them out. But if I mow down the dandelions, then the bee can go work on the farmer's crop, right? Because he's not here mucking around with my dandelion problem. He can go over there. How am I not helping the bees but mowing my lawn so he can just not worry about my lawn?
Unfortunately, a lot of the row crops are have insecticides in them. But, there's a lot of bee habitat. We have the buffer strips, which most of them have, long grass and stuff the bees can be in. But it's a debate we need to have at the state, but I don't like to see the state out there pushing people to not mow their lawns for the month of May, while cities have ordinances against long grass because they want to keep the rodent population down.
Yeah, you can see there's a problem there. All right, Representative Munson, we are down to the nitty gritty. 5 days, and how many omnibus bills are coming your way? Health and Human Services, but how many big bills are coming your way?
Well, we've passed most of the omnibus bills on the House, or I should say the Democrats have. The Senate Republicans have passed most of their omnibus bills. Most of them are sitting in committee now trying to hash out the differences, of which there are hundreds and hundreds of differences. In fact, the omnibus bills that passed the House and Senate are so far apart in their spending and policy, I don't think we're going to have an agreement on most of them. In fact, if I was a betting man, I would say, there's a 90% chance we're not going to come to an agreement on how much we're going to spend and what policy we adopt by next Monday. And we're going to push that off until there's an agreement between the governor, Speaker Hortman, and Majority Leader Gazelka, and come back on June 14th, where we're going to just get, everybody's just going to have to sit down and eat everything that's given to them. And we're going to try to pass everything in one day because there's some kind of agreement among the triumvirate, or the three people in power.
Give me the social studies lesson here. Kids, tune in because this is going to be exciting. So you pass omnibus bills in the House. The Senate passed omnibus bills in the Senate. Let's just use Human Services. They passed a big one. You passed a big one. Now you got to go to conference committee because it's not the same bill, right? They're hundreds upon hundreds of pages, lots of amendments here, a lot of stuff here. If the Senate and the House guy get together on that committee and they say, okay, we can agree on these 10 things, but these 60 things we're not coming together on, does that 10 bill thing go through, or is it all or nothing? You come up with the same one or it's done.
The conference committee passes it back to the House and Senate if they come to an agreement. So that's, and then we can pass it.
But it's all or nothing. It's you either accept the whole thing that this committee says or it's nothing, right? And I understand you got things going. You get my point? Is it, we got these 10. The committee can agree on 10, but there's another 10 we can't agree on. We pass the 10 we agreed on, send it to you. It's not all or nothing, right? Is this where you're going to take this wrong because you're a great politician? Is this where politicians say, well, I had to vote for it because it had my stuff. I wouldn't have voted for it with this, but is that the camouflage we get out of this?
Well, let's just say this. They need 68 votes to pass legislation in the Minnesota House, and they have more Democrats than 68. So they don't even need a single Republican to pass that. So that they really don't even come to Republicans in the minority or Democrat in the House or Democrats in the majority in the Senate to get permission to pass legislation. They work it out with leadership in the majority in both bodies. And if they agree to pass that legislation, then they'll pass it. So, we could vote no all day long in the minority.
But how much do they change? I guess my point is, if you've read whatever the Human Services one, I'm just using that example, the hundreds of pages of Human Services, you got an idea what yours said. You guys, it got voted on. You may not like it, whatever. When they come back, it'll be different. And somehow it's going to be different. Do they at least highlight it with a big marker, put some sticky tabs on the pages that change so you can just look at the changes? Or are these hundreds upon hundreds of bills coming back at you in the next 5 days? And I'm going to expect you to do all-nighters studying, get the rapid reading thing done so you can read. How does that work?
Yeah, usually would come back. It may come back as separate, each conference committee report comes back, but frequently, and what will happen on June 15th is they'll just come back with one enormous garbage bill of everything. But typically it comes back in the final hours without enough time to even read the entire bill. Now, I've been paying attention and listening to the conference committees, and during the conference committees, you get what's called a comparison report where it shows the House version and the Senate version side by side, and you can see what stuff is that they agree on, what stuff they don't agree on, and you can listen to the debate back and forth to learn about this legislation before I have to vote on whatever the report's going to be. But likely in the end, we won't know what the agreement is until an hour or two ahead of time. I brought my wife up to the House to actually help me read a bill that was, 1,000 pages long that we got like 3 hours ahead of time. There's no way that you can possibly read the bills. It's whatever leadership agrees on that you're going to just have to vote on one way or the other.
But I've never heard of a representative in the 26 years I've been doing this that have ever said this is a good system. Why is this the system if this is how bad it is? We make the date, the drop dead date Monday at midnight before you Cinco de Mayo or whatever you guys do when you're done. But why couldn't it be made that the rule says 2 weeks before Cinco de Mayo Day, you have to be done so that you can then have the time to discuss what it's thrown in front of you and make it so no one has the excuse saying, well, I couldn't read it. You know what I'm saying? It's an arbitrary deadline.
Well, yeah, it is. And we have rules in place that require that each bill be read, on the floor 3 times and that we have public input. But every time they vote to suspend the rules and to pass legislation, when we come back in a special session on June 14th, that will be new legislation that has to be introduced. It's supposed to be heard on 3 separate days, so you have time for the public to provide input, but the rules will be suspended and they'll have the votes to pass all the bills that come through.
Why are you
right? It's a broken system, and I complain about it all day long. But in the end, lobbyists love it because they get to slide in legislation, attach stuff in conference committee that's never been heard in the normal committees, and that's how they get their stuff through.
Well, and that's what's kind of infuriating. Now, why you brought up June 14th twice now? Is that something already set in stone that we know we're not getting? Are we getting have I got a scoop on Al in the afternoon that this is coming back on June 14th? And is that has anything to do with the executive powers of the governor, which I believe he has to redo then on the 13th or something?
Yeah, it does. It has to do with both. It's keep in mind the real deadline for the legislature. I mean, constitutionally, it's Monday where we have to sine die, not Cinco de Mayo, but sine die until next February.
French or something. Yeah.
Yeah. But the real deadline for us is June 30th, because if we don't pass it by June 30th, then government, a minority of government has to shut down, right? And that'll be like the public parks close and the non-essential services will shut down, which for many of us that like limited government would be okay with. But that's the deadline that's most impactful, especially if the majority leader is going to run for governor.
All right, well, let's discuss some of that. I've got to go to break. When we come back, we'll wrap it up with Representative Jeremy Miller. What he thinks will be and not in the bill, how much we're going to spend. I haven't even asked him. Did I not read that the federal government's sending us like $5 billion? We'll talk about that next on Al in the Afternoon. And I know a guy, Representative Jeremy Munson. He's on the line with us doing our legislative update. Leading into the break, I mentioned that the federal government's sending us a couple $1 billion. You throw $1 billion here, $1 billion there, and as soon as real money. Is that even being considered in this budget? Because I thought I read $5 billion, which would be 1/10 of the budget they're proposing. It's not chump change.
No, it's serious money, and this is the latest bailout package that the federal government has passed. They just increased the amount we're receiving. It's $2.8 billion in addition to the billions they've already sent us, and this isn't appropriated yet. So the legislature would like to be involved in determining where that money goes. But if we don't come to an agreement by Monday, then the governor gets a $2.8 billion, really it's a re-election campaign fund, because he can go around the state and choose, writing checks for water towers or public works projects or grants for this and that. It's up to his executive.
Doesn't have to be COVID related.
No, it's nothing to do with COVID. It's just economic stimulus money, and there's really nothing that ties what he has to do with it.
Senator Benson's kind of a thorn in the governor's side on this issue in particular. She came out yesterday, day before I saw a video on the Facebook thing, yelling that the governor paid $275 an hour to some marketing firm out of New York to help him, massage the message and why it was sports or something. Anyway, she's all over this. Some radio station got paid to run his briefings and that sort of thing. I would think at some point the governor will say, all right, I'm not going to let the legislature decide everything, but I sure would like an executive committee of legislators who will help me with this. Now, whether you need a marketing firm out of New York, I'm telling you, marketing guys in Minneapolis should be riled up. Why can't we take that kind of money? You get my point? I don't know if he's not getting to a point where, well, maybe if 3-4 legislators were on my executive committee, he won't take the hit for everything that he spends. That's a lot of money. It's hard to spend $2 billion and not have somebody question something.
Well, he already has that. There is the committee of 10 legislators, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, who sat on a committee that spent all the COVID money. And this is how we bought the morgue. And we just, the $7 million morgue was approved by every single legislator on that committee, Republicans and Democrats. And the same reason why we spent $30 million giving it to this New York firm for promoting the vaccines, which hired, Dan Feehan, the former congressional candidate here. There was a lot of stinky spending that went on, and it was approved by rubber stamped by these legislators. But we need the voice of the people. We need all legislators to weigh in on how this money is spent.
Well, I think it's the only way we can hold anybody accountable. The point being is that if Representative Munson is in on it, he votes one way or the other for the morgue, whatever it would be. I can go to you then, because you're my local legislator, and call you up and say, what are you thinking? Why do we have a morgue for 600,000 people when we never came close to that number? I can hold you accountable. It's a lot harder to hold accountable. The government's every 4 years. And like you say, if you got that kind of money in a checkbook, watch out.
Yeah, we should certainly allow public input. We didn't know about the morgue vote until after it happened, but we need to understand what this money is going to be spent on and allow groups to come forward and debate and vet everything so that we aren't wasting money.
Is this the money that was tied, as I understand it, to somebody that came and said if you took it, then you weren't allowed to lower taxes? Is that this? I mean, it would have to do with, my point being, your guys' budgeting process as we speak. Is that affected by this?
So for all the listeners screaming at the radio saying, just give us our money back. Right. All the money coming from the federal government last year and this year can't be used to reduce taxes. Even if you had a scheduled tax reduction, you can't rebate it back to the people. It must be spent in addition to everything the government was going to be spending. So what's important for me is that we don't create more government. We don't hire people and build buildings that need to be continually maintained. There are ways to spend one-time money that aren't going to continually grow government. In 6 months when these people get laid off, if they're hiring people, would they say, well, you can't lay these people off, you need to keep them on, and then we continually grow government from there.
Well, in this committee process, is there any way of that getting a part of it? My point being is I think the governor wanted $52 billion. It's in that ballpark. So does this make a $55 billion budget then just this one time? And can they get that in there? Or is this, do the 52 billion, folks, I'll take care of the other three on my own. Does the legislature have any input on that during this process?
Right now, we don't. We'd like to, but the House doesn't want to appropriate that money. They want to wait until after session so the governor has full authority to spend it on his own.
Wow. All right. So let's wrap it up. I have just 2 minutes to go. I presume you're going to be up no less than midnight on Monday. You're going to be at the office until Monday. Could I squeeze you to get back in on Tuesday with the show next week to tell us what did or did not get done and where we're at?
Absolutely. I'll give you a great wrap up on Tuesday.
Will you do that for me? I love it. Thank you very much, sir. And any last words? You got 1 minute. Anything you want to tell the folks that they can do to help push things along in the last 5 days? Is it calling your legislator? What can people do?
Yeah, I certainly call your legislator, give them input on the marijuana legislation that's coming forward. There's some important legislation impacting our charities. We've been hearing a lot about the electronic pull tabs that the casinos want to stop. There are a lot of things that are going to be slid into these ugly bills as we near the end of session. So anything you want to do to help provide feedback to legislators, it's important. This is a critical time.
And you're always accessible. And I don't just mean to kiss up to those that come on the program, but I send you an email, I get an email back. I make a phone call, can you be on it? And you always do it. I presume legislators in the last 5 days are going to be quite busy. Is this the time? Do you think most of your counterparts are saying, I can't wait for the phone to ring and let me hear for the third time today that somebody doesn't like whatever?
Well, we're not in the back room, back smoke-filled room making these deals, so we have time to talk to constituents. Number one issue I think we should be tackling is changing Chapter 12 emergency powers to actually prevent the governor from writing law unilaterally. We should require the legislature's permission instead of this legislative veto that's in place now. That should be part of this end of session negotiation. I think the Senate should say no deals until we prevent Governor Walz from reissuing these emergency powers again.
All right, fair enough. And I'm going to throw in just 20 seconds worth. What bothers me, and I don't know if it's as any way of clearing, is this idea that people have not been paying their rent. I read somewhere like 25% of minorities, 9% of non-minorities. We're talking a large percent of people are behind on their rent. How do we get this back? Is that something that they've got in these bills? Is there something that's going to alleviate this? What I'm going to believe is just a traffic accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, there's some stuff we're doing at the state level. The Senate, the Republican Senate has tried to end the eviction moratorium. The Democrats in the House have tried to kind of make it extend it. But keep in mind that there's also a federal eviction moratorium, which was just, overturned by a federal court.
Yeah.
So we need to solve this problem. And I think there's no better time to solve it, to end it, than when we send checks of thousands of dollars to people, like we just have in recent weeks.
Representative Munson, thank you very much for being on the program. I really mean it. We'll get you back on Tuesday. You'll be a little tired. You'll have the rings under your eyes, but we'll force you to tell us what happened or did not happen. We'll catch you next Tuesday.
Thank you, Al.